Hello and welcome to the Auto Guide Show. This week we talk about a couple of Civics. Kyle and I drive very different SUVs. The Corvette does indeed go crazy, and the OG electric car is no longer a car. But first, a word from our sponsor. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you order the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love. Okay, so kicking things off is a head-to-head comparison. That's really just a spin-off of our 8-car compact, and it's looking at first and second place and sort of why they finished so high and why the Civic beat the Elantra. I mean, there's not much we can say here that we don't say in the video we didn't say already before.
Yeah.
I've gone over this many times, but it's, you know, what we said, the Civic just does everything so good. And I don't know, we'll just say the Elantra does everything 9.5 to the Civic, but the price is less than that. So it's sort of, you know, is it the value up to you?
Yeah. I think you summed it up best in the main video, right? Is like it's the diet Civic, and I think like that isn't an insult, because the Civic is the best car in the class, and it really has solidified that position with this hybrid. But the Elantra Hybrid really surprised us. I think that was the shocker, right, out of this comparison. And so doing the head-to-head, we really dug into like what makes it so good, and it's just such an easy car to get along with. I actually got a message from a friend a little bit after this video went live saying, "Oh, I'm so happy to see that this finished so highly because it's my car." I was like, yeah, it's really good.
And like the K4 commenters on our video,
Mm-hmm.
but. And we can't change some things to the Elantra that we're not overly enthusiastic, or not, like styling and the weird way the rear trunk opens. But the chassis had a little more control without giving up much comfort, and there was things like wireless CarPlay. It would be a tough choice between the two.
Yeah, and we know that
the value is still there, of course.
Yeah, and we know that this chassis is capable of being sportier, right? Because the Elantra N is hilarious fun, and so like this has gone so far the other way. So the elasticity that is built into this platform is really good. It's just the Civic just does both of those things a little better, right? It's more comfortable, but it's also a little more engaging. So yeah, I mean, both of them. If someone is shopping for a car and they get either of these, congratulations.
Yeah, you know, to your point you just made, I never really thought of it like that. But yeah, the Civic is just such a good platform to start with. It just inherently handles well. And then you look at the Type R versus the Elantra N, and yeah, like the Type R is again another level up, but it's also many levels up in price.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of goes through the whole range, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, enough about those cars. Moving on. So we knew the next generation Nissan LEAF was coming. But I don't know if anyone really expected this. I mean, there's no surprise something going crossover, but the weird thing is it's smaller. But
Yeah.
Nissan's calling it a crossover. Now, if you look at it, it has a very crossover-y coupe shape, but more carish, sort of like the Crown, the regular Crown, not the Insignia.
I was going to say it's either Crown or Tesla Model Y. The shape of it, it's like, oh, it's a crossover.
But then you look at the specs, it's not as long. Okay, that doesn't mean it's crossover or not. Yeah. But the roof line's a little shorter, and it loses almost a half inch of ground clearance compared to the current LEAF, which everyone considers a small hatchback. So I don't know if crossover is just by how big your wheels are, the styling.
Well, hold on, Mike. Like, so because it's a different shape, it's obviously all-wheel drive because it's a crossover, right?
Yeah, no, of course not. It's still. I'm wondering how much the actual architecture is still the same underneath. I'm assuming it's a lot the same. Like obviously completely revised, but you know, like how we said it before, how platforms aren't always new platforms now. With all this modular stuff, they sort of take the existing one and really fix it up, make it better.
So if this is the same platform underneath, props to Nissan, because we've seen it with the Pathfinder and the Z, and those still look a little bit like their predecessors. This doesn't look anything like the old one.
What we'd have to do is try to get them side by side and look at just the doors, because
Mhm.
that's and the roof, because that's sort of where like the main structure should be. You could, change the rear hatch, the front, and all that. But anyway, besides the styling, which I'm going on about too long, it is all good news otherwise. So the smaller motor, much more powerful. The bigger motor, same horsepower but more torque. The two batteries, there's two sizes again, but they're both larger.
Mhm.
So there's more range on all trims. They haven't announced the range on small motor, small battery yet, but the rest are 259 to 303, which is a
Wow.
big gap considering it's the same battery and same motor. But I guess if you get the fancy platinum, which I'm assuming this is, it has the big wheels and tires, which probably really eats into
Yeah.
the battery. And there's like a heat pump and electronic heater. So yeah,
Wow.
it sacrifices a bit there. Charges up to 150 kilowatt. So yeah,
Okay.
you can do proper stage 3 charging.
What kind of plug is it?
It yes, it is yes. So it has the traditional J and a bunch of numbers on one side of the car, and on the
Okay.
other side of the car is the Tesla one, for a better
Oh, the next
use of the
one.
term. Yeah,
Okay.
the N North American charging standard.
Yeah.
So both plugs are on the car standard. It's not like a lot of the new ones where they're maybe going to North American charging standard, but you can get a adapter to still plug in the old school. This one has both, and you just pick what side you want to park it on. So you get to either, and they have a thing. I don't know exactly how it works, but basically you preset through Nissan, I guess, your credit card and your info, and they're partnered up with a ton of EV providers. So when you pull up, you just plug your car and it just starts charging. You don't have to pull out an app. You don't have to tap anything. You don't have to turn anything on. It just knows, like, oh, this car, this charger, off we go.
So it's like a Tesla.
Yeah, it's a Model
Okay.
Y. So I mean, I know we're making fun of them about the crossover designation because, I mean, it doesn't look like a car, no, it is. So whatever, it is more modern. It's still a little out there in styling, but each generation gets a little more conventional compared to what
Yeah.
it initially was.
I-
And it's still, we talked about the old one was sort of in a class of one. I still think this is like, this still isn't a Ionic 6 competitor.
mhm.
Even the EV4 is bigger. Like, this is still this smaller. Like, it's where the Bolt kind of used to play, but right
The
now
Bolt.
it's gone. I mean, that
Yeah.
Bolt keeps coming back. So
Yeah.
it's
The
supposed to come back
Bolt's.
again.
I'm sure the Bolt's gonna come back basically like this. It came back or it left as a hatchback and a SUV, and it'll probably come back kind of like this. I mean, I think you're right. There's nothing that really competes with this, and I think it's cool. I think it's a conventional enough that it should attract more people. I think the styling is a little odd, but I mean the color is fun. I like the funky tail lights that kind of look like a Z. I'm hoping this does well. As long as it's priced right, I think people will actually consider it.
It's funny you mentioned about the styling because, yeah, like, it's like a baby Murano, but with some Z taillights, and not the grill, but the headlights are a bit of Murano there.
Yeah, and
It's
there's like a little bit of
Aria.
Aria. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, but it looks like a Nissan, and yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's a better car.
yeah.
All right, so moving on to other news, we talked about this last week, and we were right. I mean, it was no surprise, but the name, well, we were right. We knew it probably was going to be Zora. So Chevrolet has a Corvette, and they're calling it the ZR1X.
The Zrix.
Yes, and the X, I don't know why it's called X, but basically it is the super Corvette, because you already had a 1054 horsepower ZR1
Yeah.
that had a 5.5 liter turbo V8 sending all that power to the rear wheels, and some people question, would you get it down? Well, this basically plucks the E-Ray's front motor and battery and puts it into the ZR1, and now you have 1250 horsepower and all-wheel drive, although not traditional all-wheel drive, and you're talking 190 horsepower versus over 1,000, so you're not going to get even distribution. But I mentioned when we talked about it last week, it's very much like what I thought it'd be. It's like the Le Mans prototypes, which are now hypercars, but what they've been doing there for a decade or so now, where you have a small electric motor that just helps rip you out of corners and give you that initial burst. It's not meant to be used for more than a second or two, and it's not meant to save fuel or anything. It's just to get that exit, which
Yeah.
adds up to a huge time improvement. And there's already, of course, the flame wars online about GTD Mustang versus this, and Chevy it isn't as fast. That's why Chevy's not publishing this and that. It's like I still don't see a world where this goes slower on the Nürburgring. I know we're getting to the point where downforce and chassis are maybe more important than power, but you have like 450 more horsepower and all-wheel drive on a notoriously slippery track in the sense of like it's not great pavement and
Yeah.
all the evolution you know what I'm talking about, the height changes.
Yeah, the elevation changes.
That's it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's interesting because I think we said last week, like I'm not sold on this actually being quicker around the track, but if it has everything that the ZR1 does, and it sounds like it does, right? It has all the same extreme aero packs, everything. So it has a little bit more weight on the front axle, but then of course it can get out of corners faster because of that electric motor. It's like, well, then yeah, like maybe on a track like the Nürburgring, it probably will be quicker. Maybe on a really, really like technical course, maybe it wouldn't be more of a high speed one, but one that, like you said, has a lot of low speed, slippery corners. This might have the advantage. And I think either way, I can't see the GTD beating the Corvette, either of them.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, are you talking about the GTD? You're talking about the regular ZR1? Yeah, no, I don't. Even the regular Z1. So I think it's a little heavier and it has a little less downforce, but it's more naturally balanced. And again, we're talking 250 something horsepower. And Chevy, they usually know what they're doing every time they take a Corvette there. Now, we never got official Z06 times, and it kind of sounds like that was a bit of a disappointment, but I think that was things had gotten so crazy before that. It's such a cool car, but it wasn't this leap in power and downforce. Like I think unofficially did just over 7 minutes, which is still stupid fast. But
yeah, but like 911 GT3s are now getting under 650.
Exactly.
Honestly, it's like it's tire tech that has dropped times quicker than anything else in the last 15 years. But yeah, this is wild. This is pure hypercar competitor. I don't care how much more they price it. Like what is the difference between a regular Stingray and a E-Ray? It's like 30 grand or something. If that's the difference on this, or less because it's CR1, or I don't know. They can charge whatever they want and people will buy it.
Yeah, I think they're saying like 250, which is like that's a lot of money, but compared to what it will most likely beat, that's still a bargain. And like you said, they can get all the ZR1 stuff, including, I know I should know the name right now, but I don't, of the package that gives you all that suspension upgrade.
DTK, I think.
Something like that, yeah. It's a bunch of letters. So yeah, you throw that in, and like that's the perfect track to get it. And like you said, if you have one that has way more high speed, then the ZR1 may beat it. The weight isn't crazy. Like we were talking about this before, the E-Ray compared to the regular Stingray, it's like I think 200 pounds. So it's not like it's like this huge thing, but that's still a lot when you're talking sports cars.
Well, yeah, and this is over 4,000 pounds now. So I mean, the Corvette has packed on some weight.
Yeah, I know, and that's sort of like back to the GTD wars. We're like, oh, it's so heavy, it's not gonna be faster. It's like, you know what? When you're talking that kind of power, it's not like the GTD is a lightweight. We talked about that when it came out. It's pretty heavy itself, but it does make more downforce, according to this compared to ZR1. But we're not talking a big difference either. So
yeah.
Anyway, moving on to things we actually drove. So Kyle, you drove an Expedition, but a different kind.
The Tremor. I drove the 25 Expedition Tremor. It, is substantial. Oh, geez, excuse me again. It is substantially updated for 25. It's like we just said earlier, platforms are new and then they're not. So this is all the same dimensions as before, but Ford did update the front half of the chassis, really focusing on making the ride less harsh than it was the last gen. And I think they've succeeded based on, I mostly drove the Tremor. I spent a little bit of time with the Platinum, which rolls on enormous wheels, 24s. And it was a little harsh. And as we've said so many times before, it's the off-road oriented version that actually rides nicer because it has 18s. And so it has these big, thick sidewalls. It's a little roly-poly, but it's comfortable. We went on an off-road course that was admittedly designed for the event, but still, I think the impressive thing there was that they were okay with us hitting the skid plates. They kind of expected us to. This does...
Did you jump it?
No, we did not jump it. We did put it through a really big splash zone, which was fun. Nice. But yeah, it did everything it needed to do, and it probably does more than what most people need. But I think it looks cool. It can tow quite a lot. Maybe not the Tremor, but certain trims can tow up to 9,600 pounds. Of course, because it's a Ford, it has all the really cool trailer assists. My favorite thing, which is the navigation that takes into account your trailer's dimensions. So it'll give you a different route to make sure that you don't go under any tunnels that you won't fit, which I think is so clever. Yeah, it's a very comfortable vehicle. Of course, it's also really expensive.
That's just the nature of that class now. And it's got the cool front bumper. You never have to worry about parking curbs.
True.
Hearing you talk about this in the revision, especially to the front end, like it's going on 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now, we did Wagoneer, Expedition, Sequoia, and Denali Yukon.
Yeah.
And this came last because it was the oldest one, and the chassis was a bit of a mess. We like the engine, but it's making me think we need to maybe gather these back because the Wagoneer's got the Hurricane now. This has been heavily refreshed. The Tahoe or the Yukon, whatever we want, it's been refreshed. The Sequoia we had was a prototype, so getting one that's a couple years older and kind of more bugs ironed out. Yeah, I think it's be an interesting revisit. And there's also a brand new Armada that we didn't have the first time because it was so old. So
that's true. And the Armada and this both have 3.5-liter turbo V6s.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Could have a little 5-way body on frame truck battle.
Yeah, I really overall I thought this was pretty good. The one thing I think it needs is an air suspension. A lot of the other ones have it these days, and so that feels like a bit of a miss. But one other
maybe not in this trim, but
yeah,
you're right. When you get in the higher trims, that's what, like you said, those platinum tires were punishing. Well, you throw in the air suspension and it irons it out basically.
So that'd be one thing. And then one other quick thing I just want to say before we move on to the next one. People who are listening can't see this, but Mike, you know how there's always the one part of the wheel that has the electric spice, that's the official Ford name, electric spice highlight for its one spoke. Do you know why that is? It's because that's where the stem is. So their argument was like, oh, if you're off-roading and your car gets muddy or whatever caked, then you know where the stem is because you just look for that color. And I thought that was a really nice touch. Now it makes sense.
Electric Spice is the one who didn't make the group. I think she was the backup.
Yeah, she was the 6th.
All right, well, moving on to a SUV with a V8 and turbos. So I drove the Lamborghini Urus SE. So it replaces both the S and the Performante this year. They're all still on the site, but that it's just going to be SE, and it's a plug-in hybrid. So some people are kind of up in arms. Lamborghini made an SUV to begin with, which is heavily related to German ones, but it is unique in its in its look and character. Basically, I just focus on, does the SE make it better, worse, or indifferent? And I think it makes it better. And I won't take too much time because I don't want to harp on this forever for a vehicle that maybe one of our listeners is actually going to buy. But we can all wish we owned it, because I sure wish I owned it. So it is a plug-in hybrid, and it actually can go surprisingly far on a charge. They say 60K or 37 miles. I was never getting that, but I was probably doing at least 50.
Wow.
It has an almost 200 horsepower motor, and in town, you have more thrust than you would ever need in this, I think it's 5,400 pound SUV. On the highway, it starts to get strained. You could go up to highway speeds. It'll go 80 miles an hour on just electric, but you have to really start feathering it. The cool thing with it is it has a there's different digital gauge options, but the regular ones, if you're not in the race mode, it's like it's a tachometer, and in the middle is the RPM gauge. But when you get off the accelerator, the regen goes on the inside in the little blue bar, so you can see how much is going, and like it's not RPM, but it's like numbers. And then on the outside, if you're on electric mode, it tells you how much electric motor is being used. So when you're trying to get on the highway and whatnot, electric power, you can see like when you're going to hit at 8,000, then it makes the motor kick in or the engine kick in.
Okay.
So kind of fun to play with that.
Yeah.
And then when the engine turns on, well, it's still the 4-liter turbocharged V8. It's down to 620 horsepower here. It was 657, I think. But when you add 192 horsepower electric motor, you're at 789 horsepower total and over 700 pound-feet of torque. And for those that are serious car nerds like us, that is a good chunk more than its closest twin, the Porsche Cayenne E-Turbo. Is that right? Turbo E?
Turbo SE Hybrid? Is it an S?
There's no S.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to look that up because when I was doing the video, I was like, is it the S? No. I think it's just called the Turbo E Hybrid now. But it's 739, I think. So it's like a 60 horsepower difference. So this Lamborghini says we'll do 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. The Performante was 3.1 or 3.2, and the S was 3.4. So it's between the two.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because it's almost 600 pounds heavier than the S and even more than the other one.
Yeah.
This still has the 17 point something inch carbon ceramic front brake rotors with, I think it's 10 piston calipers. And the rears are 16 inch. They've upsized compared to before because there's more weight back there because that's where the battery sits. It's a 25 something around there kilowatt hour battery. So it's a sizable little battery.
Yeah.
That's why you get the weight. It takes away cargo space. So you're down from over 20 cubic feet to 16. But like the way that it's shaped, you're not putting a lot in there. But this still is the only Lamborghini that you can take rear seat passengers and the only one that you could put decent cargo. You're not going to have a weekend getaway for 4 in here, but for 2, for sure. 4 people on a day trip or just an overnight trip, yeah, you could fit that in here. And it's obviously Lamborghini's #1 seller.
If you're going anywhere further, you're taking one of your other dozen cars.
Unless you're trying to impress someone. But I mean,
yeah,
like people, again, don't like that Lamborghini is an SUV. Well, you know what? Just like Porsche and now Ferrari, it's what's keeping the companies going because this this does outsell all the other cars combined. Like it's...
Yeah, I feel like Ferrari probably could have existed without an SUV and they still would have kept going, but it's just this helps.
Yeah, I'm sure Lamborghini could too, but what it allows is more special editions like 17,000 Temario or Ario, whatever, Temerarios are going to show up because this keeps selling. So yeah, in conclusion, it makes it better. And you're trying to impress people with this, you still have that crazy sound, especially in Corsa, which is the race mode. It can handle ridiculous with its 325 rear tires, and it's fast. It goes 194 miles an hour. Like that sounds terrifying in an SUV, but in a Lamborghini SUV, I'd be like, yeah, I'm sure it can.
Yeah.
I didn't get to test that. But yeah, so I think just being able to be like, oh, look, now my Lamborghini's riding on all electric power, or look at this sophisticated button setup to like make the battery charge or not charge or deplete. Like it's just another like impressive, oh wow thing for your passengers. So yeah.
Lamborghinis are about theater. So
exactly. Yeah. And as a side benefit, you get 20 miles per gallon average instead of 16. So
wicked.
There's that. All right, final story is a Honda Civic that looks like it's in a smoke cloud.
Yes, it was very foggy when I headed up into the mountains. I had the Civic Type R in California for a week. It was one of those really lucky things where I was going to be driving the new SI, and that sounded like a totally excellent thing to drive for a week. And then last minute before I arrived in town, it got moved to a Type R. Oh darn. I say in my story, I never got to do our hot hatch or sport compact comparison a few years back. You and Jeff did, and I always felt like I missed out. And it was something that I really did feel bad about missing out on because sport compact cars are my jam. I love everything about them. I love the tiny footprint because it's easy to drive in the city. I like all that power and engagement. I like that they're still pretty practical. The Civic is still a hatchback. I can fold down those seats and store a ton of stuff. If I really try, it feels like a regular Civic driving down the highway, except if I look down and see all the red carpets everywhere. The Type R is magic. I won't go into too much detail about it because look, it's been around for a few years. Everyone who drives it raves about it. It is expensive. It's very expensive for a Civic. Nothing else has this focused feeling at this price though. The best way for me to sum it up is it's the 911 GT3 of hot hatches. There's no slack. It's so fun all the time. I don't understand how it puts down 315 horsepower without any torque steer. Just
magic.
Such a blast. Yeah.
All right. Well, we should wrap this up. We've just talked about 2 ridiculously fun cars.
Yeah.
Tough job.
It's hard.
So we'll take a quick break on the Auto Guide show brought to you by eBay Motors. I'll be back with Greg, and we're going to talk wash mitts. Then Kyle and I'll be back with our special guest. I will talk F1 with Colum, and then Kyle will be back to wrap things up. We'll see you in a couple seconds. Swapping out your tires? There's nothing like it. With eBay, you'll find the feel you're looking for, from smooth highway rides to grip for rough terrain. Get all the tires you need at prices you'll love. eBay, things people love. Okay, welcome back. We once again have Craig joining us to talk products, and this week I see it as wash mitts, which is essential if you plan to ever wash your car, really.
That's right. I generally like using a wash mitt as opposed to, say, like a washcloth or just whatever sort of rag that you've had in your garage for the last 10 to 20 years. We have a great list here of a number of wash mitts that are, quite useful. There's a couple on here from Chemical Guys, which I've tried both of these over the years. I like the one that we do have up on the screen there. That's a good one. That's a microfiber one, and that's pretty good. It's a dually one. It's pretty good. The fibers are dense. There's also another one on here that I really like. That's the Meguiar's one. That's a microfiber one. Super easy. They get your car clean. And then I really enjoy the chenille, I think, microfiber. That's actually our number one overall pick. And that's the one that comes into the bright neon green. So click through to the story and you can see all of these top 3. I've tried them out at different points the last few years. The benefits of being able to sort of connect your hand to the mitt and clean your car really I think it pays off, especially if your car is dirty, really dirty. Like this time of year, maybe cars aren't quite as dirty. It's summer, we're not getting like the grime, the salt, the mud, all that stuff. And you more or less just want your car to look good. And that's where, these can also just add that extra layer of shine. So I like these a lot. Mitts have been around for years, but I almost feel like they've become a little more common. Growing up, I just recall like my parents they didn't really use mitts. They just used big sponges and things like that. But these are definitely what people use now. And I think we're in a good place. I think next weekend my car will be due maybe for its like twice monthly wash. I'm going to use one of these and hopefully get it looking good for, as we head through the midpoint of summer.
Yeah, I remember being a child in the 80s and washing the car with my dad with whatever sponge we grabbed out of the garage and a bucket full of dish soap and all the things you'd never think of doing now. But as far as the mitts go, I have that number one pick, the Chemical Guys chenille. I really like it. I use it to clean my cars. I use it to clean a lot of the press cars I have when I need to. What I like about it is it's got the, I don't know what you call them, but almost like the hair, the microfiber strands. Yeah. But they don't get caught on trim bits. And that's problems I've had with some of the wool ones back in the day when I'd be cleaning cars, wherever like the badges are or some trim bits, you'd get little bits of mitt kind of ripped off and stuck in there. And you have to peel it out. This one doesn't seem to do that. And also, to your point of really dirty cars, when it gets really dirty, it doesn't seem to trap the dirt in it when you rinse it out as much. So you're not worrying about scratching your car by putting the mitt back on. So yeah, I've got nothing but the positives with it. It's probably been the best glove I've had.
I think they're good too, even if you do the sort of approved 2-bucket method, or if sometimes, you just fill up whatever pail is near the garage door on the shelf and then, rinse, wash, rinse, and you're good to go. It's like maybe like a 10-minute sort of exercise. These are good for that too, and to your point, with all of these, I've had good luck without having them catch too much on trim. Like if I have to wash down, say a press car, like a Cadillac that might have a lot of trim or bright work on it, you don't want to turn back a car with a bunch of random threads on it. So these have all been pretty good at just gliding over the surface.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And they're good for multiple surface too, which is nice because some of my older mitts, you'd use them on, say, an exhaust or something, and it would stain the mitt and be ruined. these ones seem to be able to not self-clean, but be cleaned off
Yeah.
pretty easy, which is a big plus too.
Usually I just rinse them off and leave them in the bucket, or maybe let them dry in the driveway. I have on occasion, like if it's a really muddy car, I'll just run them through the washer, and then maybe let them dry outside even, throw it on the patio. But on the rare occasion I've had to do a full wash and dryer cycle, they've all held up pretty well too. So, but if you look at most of these prices, they're under $10. They're sort of made to be used, and then, recycle, so to speak, if you need to.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. We're getting into the real hot and humid parts of the summer now as we get into later June. So, like I said, you can wash any time of the year, but this is the time when most people take the extra effort, because your car may stay clean for more than one day, as it doesn't in the winter where we live. So these are great options. People can go to AutoGuide and check them out. So again, thanks for stopping by, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. See you later, Mike.
Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease, and because you're committed to driving that thing further than the odometer can handle, you start to think to yourself, you know what, I could probably also use some new brakes, some shocks and struts, and this baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find any part you need there. It's unreal. From wipers and headlights to cold air intakes, exhaust systems, and even that turbo you've had on your mind. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. Because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major, and mods are always intense, so you need to know that these parts guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in wrench first. And in the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back, simple as that. You know what you love more than the car itself is driving it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance, and you're locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info and get the exact parts that fit. When you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. So now that you know all that, imagine standing at that open garage door looking at your car you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible. Whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. So continuing on with the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors, we have Colum Wood back to talk F1. It's been an interesting week, as always. Seems every week's interesting. I guess when people see this, it'll already be a week old, but we can quickly discuss the Canadian Grand Prix. It's here to stay.
Yay, which is good because, hey, we're in Canada, we like that. But I normally wouldn't even include this stuff because I don't, it's not that big of a deal. But we always talk about how it seems that F1 gets rid of all the old school good races and keeps adding on all these like city races that are going to be terrible, etc. So it's not an old school racetrack per se, but it is a sort of a legacy race, and it always produces a good race. It's always entertaining. So boom, we have a good entertaining race that's going to stay on the calendar until 2035. Celebrate the small victories, I guess is what I'm saying. So.
Yeah, and so last week's, whatever, whenever people hear this, there was no weather and it was a pretty straightforward race, yet it was still entertaining because Lando decided to stop thinking for a little bit. As much as I'm a Lando fan, I'm a huge Lando fan, and he even said right away, he's like, oh, what was I doing? And I don't know what he was doing. I think the old adrenaline got pumping a little too fast there.
Yeah. So funny enough, actually, again, while the race to a certain extent was like a lot of, it wasn't crazy and wow. There was like for a while there, the top five were within like 6 seconds of each other for a long, like the last 20 laps of the race. Like you don't normally see that. So it was some pretty tight racing, and I don't know. Like this really sort of, I feel like sunk Lando's ship. Like I'm really wondering now if this is a case of like McLaren says, look, we now have a clear number one and number two driver. Like they wouldn't publicly say that, but internally they I think there's like a whole race victory between the two of them in terms of points. And so they're going to, and you knew this was coming. You knew that they were going to have to as the 1-2 drivers in the championship. They were going to have to figure it out themselves on the racetrack, right? So, kind of disappointing that Lando, it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't good. He shouldn't have done it. He had more laps to go. He had better opportunities probably coming. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right. In this one move, I think that's his championship, unless there's a accident or a catastrophe to Piastri in the next soon races, so it closes that. But I think at the time, Lando had the faster car at the time. He was on the better strategy for that moment. He was trying to pass him. He almost did twice, and he just got too over aggressive. And you weren't going to pass him on the outside in that corner anyway. I don't know if he thought he could catch him off guard and pinch him down low, but I think it's championship. If it comes to team orders, you're going to go with the guy that has the 20-something point lead. I mean, the only kind of thing for Lando is they are 1-2 and they have a bit of a lead, but he kind of lost the second place to Max because Max came second in the race. So he's got to worry about Max down there more maybe now than Piastri up top if they want to come 1-2.
And you also see that what happens, will McLaren stay this dominant force through the second half of the series of the championship? Often you see, teams come back from the summer break and it's a whole different series. You're like, what's going on? The top teams aren't at the top anymore. And already it looks like, well, interestingly, that McLaren, in that race, weren't nearly as quick. And I wonder, so there were some rumors that we've seen numerous Mercedes engines go kaput over the past little while, that maybe McLaren turned down the juice a little bit on these cars. So that's why, they were purposefully slow in order to conserve the engines, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, because Russell won pole and then went straight to win. But like you said, they were close. And Norris put himself in a hole in qualifying, and he dug out of it till he crashed himself. But with traffic and stuff, it looked like they were making time. I even thought they were maybe both going to get Max. But once that incident happened, it seemed even Piastri kind of backed off a bit. I don't know if he had any damage or he's just worried, but that's what you do if you're way up in a championship.
Yeah, you don't take third place.
So I think you're right. It's crazy because it seemed like Lando was the number one driver having seniority, and I think even Zach said it's the Lando Norris era, and you know what, Piastri's probably winning the championship this year, barring, like you said, a second half complete turnaround or catastrophe. Mercedes though is coming on every week. They seem a little stronger.
They do.
George won, but there's quite a gap that George would have to make to get back up there. I think he could challenge for third or second for sure, but all the way passing all three guys. That's the thing. People think, there's just this many points, but there's three different drivers you have to pass. So you have to have three drivers that all suffer, not just the guy in first.
Yeah, and it's always loved if you go back at some of the historical races of I was 2010 or something there was the first three races, the first 6 or 7 races of the year were all won by different drivers, and you get to the end of the championship and the points are divided so much between people that there's a lot of competition, but also a lot of ability to move. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I guess Austria's next, and then a little bit of, I don't know what's coming after that, but it really slows down over the summer months. July and August there's almost 2 breaks in the calendar. I know there's only officially 1, but it's kind of there's 2, 3 or 4 week breaks. So there's very little racing for a while, which means I'm gonna have to figure out something I'll do with my weekends. I gotta, I'll be with my son at the racetrack instead or something. So
yeah, the official break isn't as long, it seems, as usual, but like you said, there's more. But off to the Red Bull Ring we go for all the flares that always go off that confuse me, because they have orange for Max, but that's also McLaren's color, so you're kind of not really sure what's going on. But that's usually a decent race, especially if they have the chance of rain. And if rain hits there, it's always good because of those. There's some crazy slow corners that aren't easy to get out of in the wet.
They are not. No. All right, what's next on the docket? Yes, this is an old tweet I've thrown up for those who people listening can't see it, but it was the CEO of F1, Stefano Domenicali, meeting with the Prime Minister of Thailand. And so the gist of it is, it sounds like Thailand is getting ready to have a race in Bangkok. Thai cabinet just approved plans for a $1.27 billion spend to basically put a track together, which apparently when Vegas spent $500 million. And that was like outrageous when they did it. And now the Thai government's looking to spend like, 2.5 times that. So, but it looks like it's moving towards a 2025 race is when we'll likely see racing in Thailand. And there's a lot of speculation about like it'd be like a city race again. Who knows? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
some of the city, it depends on what they do. I mean, some of the city tracks can be good. Some of the newer ones aren't terrible because they have extra space to run off, and it's not just nonstop walls. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, I saw the speculation to go around the Grand Palace and through the city streets, but racetracks are always better than city tracks.
Yeah,
because that's what they were built for. So anyway.
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll see. Soon we'll be racing 42 weeks a year or something in F1.
42 weeks a year, all in different cities.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Grand Prix, probably not.
Sudbury Grand Prix. All right, so moving on.
Yeah, so this is a weirdly sort of complicated discussion. I put up this tweet of Martin Brundle defending this guy Derek Warwick, who he was one of the stewards for the Canadian Grand Prix, and I saw like the morning of the race, he was like basically he was suspended from his duties. I don't know if you followed this at all, but it was interesting. There's sort of a larger picture. Apparently, he had made comments. He had, as sort of commentary, and so that basically violated some, FIA standards, etc. And so he was suspended. Although apparently he's back for the next race. It was like temporary. But there's a bigger issue here, which is interesting. So Johnny Hebert, who a lot of people would know, former driver, and he was actually dismissed from his role of doing commentary. And the real challenge here, that what gets really confusing and really sort of open to conflict of interest, is that what Johnny Hebert was doing and some other people do is there are all these betting sites that betting is enormous right now, and they're trying to build a repertoire. So what they do is they purposefully interview you. You actually have like a contract. So as like a Formula One driver, you would or former commentator or driver, etc. They would pay you for basically an article where, you would sit down and chat with them about different drivers, your opinions, things like this. Right. And so then the whole point is that this, betting company, this casino, whatever online casino, would then promote your article out there. And people would quote you because you're famous and know what you're talking about, etc. And then all these it's the New York Times, it's whatever, are quoting John or Hebert, who said this on, whatever, betcasino.com. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. But and then those get backlinks, they get visibility. It's basically all a marketing strategy, right? So, but clearly there's the huge potential for conflict of interest when if you're a steward. It's one thing to be a commentator, but if you're a steward who is deciding potential penalties and outcomes of races, and that also impacts betting odds, that's you can just foresee the potential of problems, right? Like if you were looking to make a lot of money off of something like that, you could definitely do that. So I don't think that's what's going on. I don't think anyone's accusing that, but they're like, hey, look, this opens up this pretty weird scenario. So I guess that's not, and that's why Martin Brundle was coming to Derek Warwick's defense, basically saying that he's a outstanding guy and that's not his problem. I went down a rabbit hole looking into this. I was like, I had no idea this whole world exists and this sort of pay for play commentary stuff. So.
Yeah, but back to the actual suspension. I get strict letter of the law why they did it is you're basically like the umpire, the referee. You're supposed to be fully impartial, and you make a comment saying, like Max basically was an idiot for what he did and deserves a penalty. Like everyone knows that, but you shouldn't say that. I mean, I don't know if it was worth suspension. Like it was such an obvious thing, but at the same time, you never hear like a baseball umpire or a football referee in a post-media scrum saying that player was such an idiot. Of course, I kept throwing the flag at him because then it seems you're not impartial. So yeah. Anyway, it's over. Move on. Sure, he won't say anything ever again because it's not worth it, and we'll see what happens in Austria.
Yeah, and in the meantime, maybe somebody wants to pay us to have comments on Formula One, and we could shit talk somebody, and then get some betting odds on it. I could talk smack on the podcast.
Change the betting, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It won't impact it. My opinion will not affect anyone's betting odds. That's for sure. So maybe irrelevant. So.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. Next week, we will have a closer preview of the next race, and I'm sure more rumors and news. Until then, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.
All right, welcome back. We have a special guest this week joining us from halfway around the world. If you could just introduce yourself and what you're doing currently.
Yeah, everybody. So my name's Kalen Neely. I live in Japan, and what I'm doing is working as a car exporter. I'm sure everybody's seen these sort of auctions and stuff like that online, and I'm one of the people that sometimes I go there, but oftentimes I'm translating the auction sheets and getting people set up to import the dream car, or dealers just getting set up to import the next stock vehicle. But here to talk about that today. Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll go back to the beginning before we get to how you ended up in Japan doing this. We had a guest on many months ago. It's actually one of my really good best friends growing up, and his brother ended up marrying someone from Japan, and he lived there. And he did similar, but he did parts. So he was in he has a 89. I don't want to get this right. Skyline GTS R, but he's converted it to more GTR, and he was shipping parts over. And when he came back, they brought the car with him. So it's somewhere around here.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go to the start. So did you get into cars on your own, or were you sort of born into a car family?
Born into a car family, I guess you could say. My pop was he worked for like one of the main car carriers for Ford back in the day. I want to say it was an F-150 factory. I don't totally remember, but anyway, like back in the 90s, if you had seen like big like lime green car carriers carrying a bunch of Fords on the highway, that was like the company he worked with. And we used to do a bunch of road trips and stuff as a kid. And I guess somehow the game was just like figure out the make and model of that car. So as long as I can remember, I've known most of the makes and models of cars and stuff like that on the road. Then reading car magazines, all that stuff. Wanted to be a race car driver as a kid. Never really planned out, but so I've been into it for a while.
Yeah, I know. That sounds very similar to mine. I used to try to impress my parents by telling them what engines were in cars, and no one in my family cared. So at least you had someone to play the game with. Yeah. So did you know you wanted to obviously work in this industry like straight out of school, or is it something you kind of just found your way into?
I'd say I'm definitely a lucky dude, basically. So yeah, I've always been into cars, and it's always been in my head, like thinking I'd either try to work in like cars or music or something. It was like the dream, But I didn't really imagine it happening. And then by chance, my neighbor, I grew up in South Jersey, just outside of Philly, and my neighbor was working for Subaru because their corporate office is in South Jersey. They just recently, a couple of years ago, moved to Camden from where it was before. And just by chance, one day my mom pushed me like, why don't you just ask her if they do internships or something? And I did that. And that was in the spring of 2011, which some people might remember in Japan. Everybody very clearly remembers that was when the giant earthquake hit in Tohoku. So Japanese companies were hit with that more than anything else. And she was like, oh, we're not doing interns this year because, earthquake, blah, 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 all this drama. She's like, but I'll ask. And then she asked. And apparently her particular office was allowed to have an intern, but nobody kind of really followed the procedure because they had canceled it earlier, and then they somehow still had a budget for it. So I just got super lucky. They were just like, oh yeah, we have like space for an intern and you're the only person. So I kind of showed up and they're like, okay, like you wore a suit, you seem competent, you're in school, why not? So that started the journey. And then I could tell you later, but like that's kind of how I kind of skipped around to end up being here in Japan.
Yeah, I was at Subaru, but the Canadian head office for almost 6 years.
Oh, nice.
We must have missed each other because that was in early 2016 that I started, I think. Yeah, so.
No, it would have been before you. That would have been 2012-ish, 2011-ish, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you were long gone by the time I got there. But that's how I first got to go to Japan, was with the company and got to see lots of the country, and I love it. I've only been a couple times, so I want to go back. So yeah.
They take you to Gifu? Like up at the factory and everything?
They didn't go to the factory, no. We went up to their test track. It's up near Guma, where it's like
Gunma. Excuse me, I mixed it up. Not Gifu, Gunma, yeah.
Yeah. So the test facility's there as well. It's not where the factory is, like they're near-ish, but and then we'd also stay down at Shizuku Station because that's a shortish drive to where their head office is. But I also got to go to the STI head office for my first trip, which was awesome because I grew up. I'm a little older, so when I grew up as a teenager, that's when it was the Colin McRae WRX STI rally years, and in Canada we just got you had a 2 Speed channel back then, and it was somewhat new, and and I fell in love with Subarus and rallying and all that. So I got to go sit in the 000 of 500 22B that they have in the show. It's the actual like prototype mule they used to develop the car, and they never sold it. So for someone like me, it's like that was a grail type moment. But anyway, back to
man. That's cool.
So as you said, you kind of skipped around. How did you end up in Japan?
I came to Japan for no particular reason. It wasn't cars, actually. I was living in California right before I moved to Japan. I was doing another job. It was a really cool job. I can talk about it later if you want, but it was basically like PR. Like, you probably know about this. Do you get press cars?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like working for the car that manages the press cars, the company that manages the press cars.
Okay, yeah, we don't have those in Canada, but I know what you mean. Like, like Drive Shop and some of the other ones down. And
yeah. And I drove everything from like a Ford Focus to like a Bentley Mulsanne. It was like a really, really cool job. But for some reason, I decided it would be a good idea to leave that job and that kind of career path and just go teach English in Japan for a couple of years, because that's what a lot of people do, right? Mm-hmm. So I did that, and then after I moved here, I noticed a lot of the people I was teaching English with were like trying to find jobs and stuff like that. So I was like, let me just try. Like, I didn't really have a plan to do that, but I was like, let me interview places, this and that. Ended up getting into marketing, not automotive, nothing, just like doing blogging and writing and things like that. And then by chance, I met this guy, Colin from the UK. I was just at a cafe, like working, and this guy was there, and he kind of chatted like, "Oh, you're another foreigner? Like, what are you doing here?" Kind of conversation. And he said that he exports cars, and then that like just piqued my interest. I'm like, "Oh, well, I love cars. Do you need help?" kind of thing. And so I ended up helping that guy out for a little while, and that kind of snowballed into what I'm doing now. But basically, it started from just kind of meeting another foreign guy at a bar or a cafe, excuse me, and then helping him out, and then kind of one thing leads to another. And I found living in Japan as like a foreigner, that's kind of how a lot of people get into things, because it's just a lot easier to meet people that way. You kind of have this easy recognition of each other, and then like people kind of work together and do their things that way. So I was lucky to kind of find that opening, and I've just been kind of riding on that.
Yeah, so I get the impression from, like I said, my friend's brother and other people I've met, that it's not easy to get into these sort of positions, but once you do, there's a market for it and there's demand for it. So yeah, the same with what I do. I totally lucked into this job, and then now that I'm here, I'm not going to give it up. So we were just talking briefly beforehand. So when you say you export, you're exporting all over the world?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, so as mentioned before, our main markets, the company I work for is called Davy Japan, by the way. And our main markets are New Zealand, Australia, UK, USA, Canada, probably in that order or around that order. And then lately we've been actually opening up to a couple of more places. So we're sending more to the Caribbean. Guyana just like literally struck oil. So they've been starting to buy a bunch of cars from Japan. And Sri Lanka, after having quite like rough political unrest, has now finally kind of stabilized a bit. And now people are just importing cars like crazy there. People are paying like 100K or more for like the new, like, what do you guys just call it the Land Cruiser, right? The new one.
The Prado or the regular one?
Well, yeah, they even stopped calling it the Prado here now. It's a 250.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but so that's the one we have.
Yeah. So that one, those are like crazy in Sri Lanka right now. People are going all over for them.
Yeah, we have that, the 4Runner and the GX, which is confusing.
Why do you need the 4Runner and that? But yeah.
This is another conversation. So, yeah, I mean, when you hear that you're in Japan exporting, I thought this at first until I looked at the company. You just think, oh, you're, specialized old cars for people. But as you mentioned, your markets, like you're talking all the markets that drive on the same side as Japan, so they can directly take the vehicles. And then US and Canada, I'm sure we're the nuts buying all these old cars. And every American I have on here, I like that we talk about Japanese cars, I like to rub it in their face that 15 years here and they have to wait 25 down there. So we can snap up all the good examples before they have a chance.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them actually buy them from Canadians because we did get the good ones. So is that the US and Canada? I guess that's it. You're doing 15 and 25-year-old cars mostly.
Yep. There's one pretty interesting exception. I don't know if you've seen this online, but we can send new K trucks to the USA.
Oh yes, I've heard
They
that. Yeah.
have to be off-road only. They can't be driven on the road. They have speed limiters and things like that. But that's also been something that's been actually, I was super surprised and stoked about that. When I first kind of encountered this company that I'm working for now, I was like, you can do that. Oh, that's awesome. And then, we've kind of grown that a little bit now too. But yeah, other than that, yeah, for the USA, it's pretty much that. You'll probably see something drop soon, but are you familiar with the Mazda Roadster Coupe, where they made a coupe version of the Miata?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like
If
a
anybody's
full hardtop.
yeah, exactly. So if anybody is keeping a close eye on the show and display list, you might have noticed that it popped up there. So probably somewhere online you'll end up seeing a couple of those in the States sometime soon.
Very cool. Yeah. I remember the concept from way back in the day, but that's cool that a couple of them are potentially coming over. When I was younger, I don't mean like a kid, like 10, 20 years ago, I really wanted to get a Japanese car imported. And then I started looking at the costs and the insurance. And where I am, it's still fine, but some places have banned them. Like I know in Quebec, it's really hard now to.
Yeah, right.
To have
Isn't this 25-year-old in Quebec still, I believe, or something like that, right?
I don't know the particulars, and I should because I live in Canada, but they want to just outright ban them. Like you couldn't register but you couldn't register a right-hand drive car if it wasn't already registered in Quebec. Because the French Canadians are easily our most car obsessed people. Like the amount of race car drivers and tracks and just enthusiasts there per capita is way higher, and they're the reason we got so many cool versions of cars for so long, because they wanted no AC and manual, so all these like base cheap models. So that's where a lot of the cars are going, because they wanted all these cool cars. And BC has a ton because that's where they land. But I've had a chance to buy some WRXs and Evos and stuff, but the ones that are already here, it's like I'm not going to touch. You don't know what they're going to be now. So if I ever brought one in, I'm going to bring one in that's like something a little more weird that no one else really wants. So I know I can hopefully get a decent example. Like I had a North American SVX, and I've always loved the S4 in Japan because it had the better center differential and torque split. But yeah, but maybe one day.
Hit me up.
yeah, no, I will one day. I just need to, get the kid through school and stuff. But that's always been a dream. And for a long time, I was really looking at the Cappuccino and Beat prices because they were really decent, but they started off here because they're fewer and fewer. Like the AutoZam AZ1 was always expensive, and now it's ridiculous. But
but you used to be able to pick one up for like, I guess I'll talk in US dollars. That's what everybody knows, but like like 10 grand or less or whatever. But now it's double that, at least 20 grand for one, and then even more these days depending on what you can find. But
yeah, they're over 30 Canadian easy.
Yeah. It's just, but they're just disappearing. Like there's just not as many of them around. I think the Cappuccino, to be honest, is really still the best deal. I mean, you have to know exactly what to look for on them. Like I once, not to get too tangential, but like I once more or less stumbled into this like car shop while I was on a bicycle ride of this guy, Pupa-san, who is a specialist in the ABCKs, as they call them, right? The ABC, the AutoZam, the Beat, and the Cappuccino. And he's like a Cappuccino master, man. And like he took me into a shop where he restores these. And he's like, got one pulled apart, and he's like, look here, man. Like, so if you take the seat off and you take the roof off and you look at this little spot right between the seat and the roof there, that's where water sits. And that's where they always rust out, right in this little spot. So whenever I buy these, I take them all off and just find that spot and then see if that's bad or not. If it's too bad, then I know, okay, this thing needs a lot of work or not. But it's like, when you do this industry for a while, you learn that with all these models, basically. It's like which models rust and where, which models have these issues and all of that stuff. It's been interesting. And it also, it's been frustrating too, because, it's like, there's certain models sometimes people ask about, and I'm just like, nah, like you don't want to buy like hardly any of those. And if they are available now, then they're going to be worth way more than what you think you want,
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I was talking about. That's I've missed the window of these cars that would be not affordable, but it wouldn't be crazy. Now they're because what happened was all the North American ones, like the FD RX-7 and NSX and all those Supras, the ones here were so expensive, people were getting them from Japan for a reasonable price. But now those ones have got so expensive here too, because
Yeah.
to your point about the AutoZone, there's fewer and fewer. They're just disappearing. And the cappuccino, you could get them for like 10 grand Canadian not too
Yeah.
long ago. But a friend of mine that owns a shop here, he has a couple customers with them that bring them in, and I always see them like, oh, it's like the 3/4 scale Miata, a
Mm.
little turbo engine, and yeah, it'd just be a lot of fun. But yeah,
That's
one
my
day.
favorite of those, man, for sure. But then there's also, speaking of that pricing thing, there's this weird phenomenon I've seen happen with a few models now, where there's this sort of like cycle kickback thing. Like the first time I noticed it was the R32 GTR,
Mhm.
where people first started buying them from Japan. I think it was reasonable to find one for about. It's really hard for me to conceptualize this into exchange rates and stuff, so I'm going to talk in yen for this one. So probably 3.5 to 5 million yen was like the range. I guess in today's dollars, that'd be like 30 grandish to like 40, 50 grandish.
Mhm.
And then people started buying them up. I sold a handful of them. And then it became like, nah, you need 50 mil to buy one of these. And then people in the States were like really quickly in the course of like 3 to 6 months, it became that. And then people in the States would hit me up. They're like, dude, I can buy one here for that price. And they'd send me links. And I'm like, then you should buy one there. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just the going rate here. And it's this thing that happens sometimes where like a bunch of people will import them really cheap, but then they're going to try and sell them for a profit. So then that price inflates. And then also in Japan, oh, snap. The past 3 just sold for like, 4 or 5 mil. So then all the sellers are going to hold up and raise their prices and not sell cheaper. And then you get this weird cycle where it happens sometimes with models like that.
Yeah, and it's really too bad with the laws in Japan that it's so hard to keep old cars, because I like some of the more obscure, just regular stuff, but that stuff's long gone, because, well, why would someone hold on to just a regular old whatever from Toyota or Honda from 20 years ago? So it's usually the nice stuff that's still kicking around.
It's true, but you'd be surprised, man. There are still a decent amount of just old man, like just regular cars just chilling out. Crown is an obvious one. Australians love the Crowns. Like, we send so many freaking Crowns to Australia. But you can find them really nice, and especially if they got the doilies on the seats, then okay, that's like the chill old man ride. But every once in a while, man, people buy stuff, and I'm just like, why are you buying that? Like, one was like a Honda Logo. I don't know if you remember that. It's like just this weird little like hatchback. And it's cool, I'm excited that people are getting them, but like they're around. But you're right. Most of the time, like the strict inspection rules basically disincentivize people to keep an old car running for a long time. And then they go into auction, and then companies like mine will buy them and ship them out to somewhere where they're more valuable. And that usually happens a lot sooner. Yeah.
So this is something, I've only been to Japan a couple times, but maybe it is a phenomenon. Maybe I just got lucky, but I've noticed, how you said, like the inspection laws are so tough. When we went to Guma and even further out of the main cities, I'd see cool cars just sitting. Yeah. And who knows how many years they were there. And I was like someone like you, get a hold of this and ship it, because there'd be buyers, but you don't know they're there, and the people who own them don't want to move them because they're probably long off their registration and don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, man. Like, we have bought like the kind of barn find kind of cars and stuff. Like, I think one of the earlier ones that I went and checked was an old Datsun 510 that was like in a shed somewhere that somebody had found and listed on like Yahoo auctions or something. And then, somebody wanted it, so we go and check it out. But then the thing with those cars is like, they become a burden to people if they don't have the documents and things like that for them. And it's a huge mess to try and figure that out. And then on top of that, sometimes people just decide, it's more work to try and sell this thing than to just keep it sitting over there, whatever. But I do there's another phenomenon related to that where like people just get cars for free from people who don't want to deal with them. Like a buddy of mine got a BB open deck just given to him from his friend, because his friend actually ran like an auto shop, whatever. But he's like, I don't really feel like putting this anywhere, and I don't really feel like auctioning it off just yet. So like, if you just want to have this thing for a few years, I'll just give it back to me when you're done with it. And he's like, just pay for it, get it shocking up and fixed, and it's whatever. And it's like, yeah. Because when he got that thing, it was a couple of years ago. I'm like, dude, I want that. Like, after you get done with that, like, I'll take it. And then I'll like somebody in America or Australia or Canada will want to buy that, so I'll take it. He's like, nah, it's not mine. But that's like a phenomenon, man. Yeah, people just give away cars.
I remember walking to the mall from our hotel, and there was how do you pronounce it? You know, the Galant wagon, was it Legnum
The
or?
Legnum, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a VR4, but it was a higher trim, and it was sitting
Love
beside
it.
an Lancer that again wasn't an Evo, but I don't know if they have the equivalent of the Rally Art in Japan. But they're both sitting there, and you could tell they've been sitting there for years. And I was like, someone in Canada would buy this for like 10 grand if it could get over there somehow, for sure, because
Yeah.
we like that weird stuff. You've probably met some people who've been doing this like your job forever, but I always wonder how much not the first, but the importers that caught on to this sort of GDM craze over here in like the 90s and 2000s, when they could probably just go pick this stuff up for nothing, how well they must have made out, and then it became more of a search game, I guess. But because people were trying to get rid of cars back then.
Yeah, dude. Like I'm sure people have made huge bank, and also back then, right? Like information was a lot less easy to find. So there was also, now you've got the auctions online, people looking them up and searching them, and that's good. I think it's a net positive for everybody. But back then, for sure, right? You'd have people that pick something up for a song and take it wherever, and then just, I don't know, like quadruple their money or more on stuff like that. And I think it's less possible to even do that these days because there's just a lot of data out there that people are looking up and finding and everything else. So yeah, those days are gone.
Yeah,
for better or worse.
Only so much inventory, and there's less and less all the time. That's how I joked, like our 15-year rule. I remember when we had R32s, I would see them almost weekly when they first came up, and then I remember 10 years later when they started going to the States, all these big magazines and stuff were talking about like how amazing it was that they find like they have an R32 and they're the coolest people to have them, and I'm like, they've been around here for a decade. It's old news up here. We're into 33s and 34s now. We've moved past that. But yeah, you don't see many 34s around because I think that's one car that never, even in Japan, lost any value. I think we can think fast.
Super cheap.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, man. Like this was before my time even. But like, so I was talking to someone who's a big partner of ours in Australia, actually, because Australia can import those under 25 as well, due to the way the import laws are there. It's recently changed a lot there. That's a tangent and a half, but anyway, Australians could import R34s like way back, even like when they were brand new. Apparently, there was a time when the R35 had just come out where the R34s just got stupid cheap, like 20, 30 grand, I want to say. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But like that's kind of what they were telling me. But then there was like a buyer's remorse moment where like a lot of there's your dogs. But there was like a buyer's remorse moment where I guess a handful of people like bought the R35 and then they were like not totally satisfied with it, and then they went to buy back the R34s, and that was like the beginning of those popping back off. Is what I was told. That was from a very Australian perspective, but at least nah, man, like for sure those were not as crazy as they are now. I mean, even 3-4 years ago, like R34s, people were like buying them, but they knew that they would have a wicked storage fee, to hang on to them and everything else. But now, I mean, it's just popped off like 100 grand minimum, even for something that's like fairly spent, and whatever modded and everything else. But yeah,
I can see that with the 34 and 35 because 35 is it's so much faster, but it's also so much less mechanical involvement. It's like it's doing it for you. So I've never driven an R34, but I can imagine it's more of a thrill behind the wheel of that vehicle. I mean, in here we had the same sort of thing where every time a new Corvette comes out, the old ones get cheap for a little bit because everyone's switching. But with the C8, it didn't happen as much because a lot of the C7 owners didn't want to go to the mid-engine, or they didn't like the looks, or I mean, I've driven them. Yeah, they drive phenomenally, but I also don't own a C7, so I'm not the target market of that. So we've talked a lot about North America. The other markets, you're kind of alluded to it with Australia, so some of them can import cars that are new. Is it like specific models or even whole brands that aren't sold in like the UK or Australia that's what people are coming to you for? Like I'm sure the Crown maybe is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it really, really varies a lot on the markets. For Australia, you're probably familiar with the story about Ford and Holden and pretty much all of their factories sort of like just showing up and leaving, maybe 5-6 years ago at this point now, maybe longer now. so that kind of opened the door for people who import cars to kind of lobby the government to say like, hey, like why got all these rules protecting, you know, these jobs that have gone away anyway? You might as well give people access to cheaper cars. So that has opened it up. So basically now Australia has a 25-year rule, pretty much exactly the same as the USA. So in terms of 25 years and older, just about anything goes there. So that's smooth and straightforward. But then they also have this sort of online register of cars, and they have to meet specific criteria. Just not so exact, but in general, like camper vans can go in, most electrics and hybrids can go in. There was a sports car criteria, so the cars that are significantly like special in sports cars that weren't sold originally. And then there's welfare cars, so cars that are like handicap accessible, stuff like that. And I think there's one more category that I forgot off the top of my head. But anyway, the import rules there basically have to dictate that a car has to fit one of those categories and into like the specifics that they had made for those categories. And typically it also has to be something that's not originally sold on the market in Australia. So yeah, a lot of kind of regular cars that people like to buy, like Alfards, people import a lot of Alfards and vans, Delicas, like newer ones. Also, for a little while, like Nissan LEAF electric cars were quite good because Australia, surprisingly, didn't get a lot of hybrid and electric options compared to other markets. I guess people just didn't want them back then. I don't know. But like I've been to Australia a few times now, actually kind of helping out with a car dealer that we work with down there. And it's just crazy to me. Like the Honda Fit Hybrid has been in Japan, I don't know, over a decade or more, but they don't have any version of that. It's called the Honda Jazz there, but like they only have just straight gas engines there. And a lot of like Toyota models as well, like vans, SUVs and stuff like that. I think in the States too, most of them have been hybridized for like a decade or so. But in Australia, they just didn't get those. And same thing with the reason I was told the reason the Crown is so popular there too is just that Australia just didn't really get a lot of high spec cars. Like a lot of the cars that they would get, the Arion and things like that, were just kind of very basic spec. So Crown is a car that's the same age as like an older used car in Australia, but it just comes with so many features compared to those, and you can get them for about the same price anyway. So that's why it's become quite a popular market down there. There's a lot of people that are realizing like, oh wow, like yeah, I got to do some work and a little bit of risk to import a car compared to just buying one that I can check in person. But I can get a lot more car for like what I'm paying for a normal car on the used market here, and it's still like a regular car I can drive every day, not like a weird 25 wrong side of the road car like Americans buy.
Yeah, but I mean that's why a lot of people were buying them in Canada. Is, like I said, you can get a similar model or something completely different, like a Pulsar GTR, let's say, for about the same price as buying a used Miata. So a lot of people thought, oh, let's do this. But I think, as with anything, when people look at a used Porsche, they're like, oh, I can afford that. They forget you also need to be able to afford to find parts and keep it on the road. And that's a whole other cost. You need to, it's not like you're just going to import this car and it's going to be perfect for years to come. So
for sure,
I think that's why it's slowed down a bit here. Although our rural mail carriers, that's still a huge market. I don't know if you saw any to them here.
Dude, Hilux, Surf, and CRVs and RAV4s. Yeah, we've got some dealers around the country in the States. Actually, if you know anybody in Canada looking for those, like that's a big market that we serve. I'd love to talk to them. But yeah, man, Hilux Surfs are going in droves to America to deliver mail. Like there's so many of them going out.
Yeah, I see CRVs are in here all the time because they're not the same, but there's so many interchangeable parts. They can find some basic stuff if they need to, like wheel bearings and stuff. The motors may be different, but it helps when you just reach out.
Yeah. Like, for example, the CRV, right? I believe that's the one. Somebody will probably call me out on this. I got it wrong. But like, I think it's the CRV that has certain trims, like the highest level trim has like a navigation system in it. Because Japan in like the late 90s was already like, just doing nav on everything, even like regular cars like that. But then it has like the aircon and stuff like that also integrated in it. And yeah, 25 years old, those things get a bit sluggish and blah, blah, blah. So there's weird things like that where they're like, oh, we got to buy like these regular old aircons and swap them in. And it's not interchangeable with the US models and things like that. So there's always weird things like that too that come up. And then it's like, all right, well, we got to find a bunch of aircon like head units and things like that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I worked on some prototypes with Subaru that came from Japan, and if you turn on the nav, it was so confused to put you in the ocean usually because it's not designed to work over on our shores. Well, I'll let you get going because I guess it's your weekend already.
Yeah, it's Saturday morning here, but I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. Definitely get you on again because we could just go on about other cars forever and the importing, and it's just such a fascinating business to me because it's something I've never been involved in. So it's cool. You got out there and you got into it, and you got to drive some cool cars here back in the day, and now you get to drive the cool cars over there. I don't even want to know what you've driven because I'll just make me super jealous.
Dude, I'm a wagon man right now. I just got a Spec B. Speaking of Subaru, so I've got a GTB Spec B. Yeah.
Just a Spec B. The Spec Bs that we got that 1 year, they go for so much money here still.
You would hate what I bought that thing for. It's like stupid cheap.
Yeah. When I was over there, I know we're going on a tangent, but the Lavorg STI. It's not a real STI, but when I was at the STI, they had that, and someone had one of the old Forester STIs there too, the body kit, and I was like, oh, those are so nice. So
that's a good one for a Canadian to buy. Those are ones that Australians can get them, so there are some Australians competing with you. But yeah, like mid 2000s Forester STI. Also, yeah, the legacies of that generation, like this is 2004 WRC special and things like that. If you are looking for something for Japan in Canada when you're in that 15-year sweet spot, I'd recommend something like that.
Good to know. Yeah, and I didn't even think of those old legacies like the S4s and the BSKs and whatnot. So,
there's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna now try not to go online and start researching all these cars I want to import. But thanks again for coming on, and we will
appreciate
talk
it.
again.
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Mike.
Okay, so that brings us towards the end of another AutoGuide show brought to you by eBay Motors. Just to quickly wrap it up, I'll talk about what we've been up to and what's ahead. So this week, Kyle, you and I, we were kind of comparing, kind of not comparing, two off-roaders with legendary nameplates. I have a Wrangler. You have a 4Runner. My Wrangler is the Willys 41, which is like the coolest spec ever.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of compliments, and I really like it. And it's still a Wrangler. It's the 4xe, so it's got that for better or worse. And the point of our little fun comparison is what's better, having a practical 4Runner limited like you have, or the cool Wrangler?
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. I have not gotten a lot of compliments with the 4Runner. I mean, I've also kind of kept it hidden for most of the week. I'll be taking it up to the cottage, which does feel very appropriate, but I like it. I feel like as much as I want to like the hybrid versions, the regular engine is the one that makes more sense to me. So yeah, I've been enjoying it. Maybe not in the on-road bias trim, but since I do live in a big city, it's probably the better trim for what I'm doing.
That Turbo V6 is a good little engine. It's funny, we talked way back in the episode about the Leaf potentially being on the same platform but looking completely different. This is the opposite, where it's an all-new platform and it looks just like the old 4Runner. Like, if someone doesn't know cars, they would not know that's a new car.
And so to that point is I've seen some, whenever I come up behind a 4Runner, I'm always like, wait, is it the new one? From behind, I have no idea. From the front, it's pretty clear because taco face. But from the back, yeah, I no idea.
I was waiting for you today because we were doing their video, and two 4Runners passed me, older ones, and for a split second each time, I was like, "There's no."
Yeah,
no, that's an old one.
So that's been fun. And then, Mike, what are we doing next week?
So next week I'm in town. We'll get to your gallivanting around the world in a second. So I've had a couple cancellations, and I've ended up in something actually I wanted to try. I will have the Volvo EX90. So I've always been a big fan of the XC90 through its different generations and different years. Oh, that V8 EX90, remember that back in the day?
So good.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this because you and I had a preview of it years ago. You went on the first drive, but I haven't even sat in one since. So like the big 3-row SUV that are electric have impressed more or less to this point. So I expect good things. We'll see.
Excellent. And then I am not really in town, and I am, but I'm going on two different first drives. And so one of them is the CR-V Trail Sport. I came across I came away impressed by the Passport Trail Sport earlier this year, and so now the CR-V is getting that, and a whole fleet of updates as part of its facelift. So I'm very curious because, I mean, it's one of the best-selling vehicles in America, so it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I drive a vehicle that isn't one of the best-selling vehicles in the country, but it's the revised Lexus RZ, and I'll be driving it in Europe, which means that I get to drive the European spec, which includes the yoke steering.
Oh.
So I'm very much looking forward to that, provided I get behind that not wheel.
Yeah. So my two thoughts on your two drives. I drove the Pilot Trail Sport, and I was very impressed too. I don't think Honda gets enough credit with how different and good they do make these. It isn't like so many manufacturers phone it in, whereas Subaru with the Wilderness and Chevy with the Z71, like Honda's the same. They're actually retuning stuff and putting different bits, and it feels like a different version of the vehicle, not one that just when you get it, like, oh right, I got body cladding and different wheels.
Yeah.
So and for the RZ, yeah, I think, like I said, it's not a great seller. I think that's why this drive's so important, because like its other siblings, the BZ, not the Woodlands, just the BZ, and the Solterra, big improvements this year that make them go from uncompetitive to wholly competitive. So I look forward to your thoughts.
And this has more power. It has a manual mode. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that wraps it up. Remember when Lexus was going to make a manual transmission for EVs? Still waiting for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that we will end on that note, where we will ponder whatever happened to that. And we'll be back next week. If you are in town for a day, Kyle, maybe you can join me. Otherwise, I'll have to get a special guest. But there'll be obviously more to talk about, and more guests to talk to.
All right. Well, so long, everybody.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.